The movie that I'll be covering today is Don't Breathe. It begins with an old man dragging an unconscious woman across the street, leaving trails of blood underneath. Then it cuts to a scene of a robbery where we're introduced to three characters who are Rocky, Money, and Alex. Whilst Alex is more objective with the task, Money is reckless and casual. They steal many items and leave. While in the car back, Alex finds out about Money and Rocky's plan to leave to Detroit and is upset, probably because he has feelings for Rocky. But he can't object because Rocky is in a relationship with Money. At an abandoned location, we see Money trading the items that they stole for cash, but he announces that money is not enough. But the guy in the van tells him that that's all he's gonna get. He also advises him to steal cash instead of items and gives him the location of the house. Later, the three of them discuss about looting the house, and Money tells them that its occupant is just an old army veteran who has no family and has at least 300K in the house. His money was from a settlement because a rich family was the cause of his daughter's death. Money and Rocky are ecstatic about the plan, but Alex is worried about law getting involved as anything above 10K is a major larceny, and his dad, who works for home security, could get in trouble. We later get an insight on Rocky's life. She lives with her alcoholic mother and her boyfriend Trevor. Rocky's only concern is escaping from there with her younger sister, Diddy. She gets a glimmer of hope when Alex agrees to do the job. Later at the house, Money is scouting the area while Alex and Rocky bond over a conversation of a tattoo of a ladybug. Money returns to the vehicle and tells him that no one is around during the day. Their conversation, however, is cut short by the dog barking at the window. It continues barking until the blind man, who is the occupant of the house, whistles. Money decides to perform the robbery at nighttime. At the fence, they threw a treat that will make the dog fall asleep. Unfortunately, the key that Alex brought only opened one of the four locks. When all attempts failed to get inside, Rocky suggested breaking the window and unlocking the door from inside. When inside, she quickly disables the alarm and lets the rest of them in. They lay their shoe on the floor to prevent making noise on the wooden floor. They look around the house for cash, and Money finds the blind man sleeping with a TV playing an old recording of his daughter. Money tries to gas the man. While in the midst of his concoction, he realizes that the man is awake. Fortunately for him, he goes back to sleep. With the gas released, Money yells "done" and tells them that he's asleep. They assume that the Money is behind a locked door, and Money attempts to open the door with brute force. He tries, but to no avail. So he pulls out a gun and uses a bottle as a makeshift suppressor to shoot the lock. A gun really scares Alex, as the blind man can now legally shoot them. He tries to take Rocky with him, but she doesn't want to follow him, so he is left with no choice but to leave on his own. When Money opens the door, they realize that the blind man is standing in front of them. Money tries to play it cool by telling him that he was wasted and wandered in, but the blind man steps on the broken latch of the door, and Money drops the act and points a gun at him. Being a veteran, the blind man manages to subdue Money and asks him how many of them there are. Money lies and tells him that he's alone, but the blind man shoots him. Shocked, Rocky quickly hides in the closet. Alex hears the gunshot and heads back to investigate. While heading back, he sees the blind man and watches him board up the window. Rocky texts him and tells him where she is. She tries to leave the closet, but the blind man returns and reveals a fake wall in which the safe was hidden. He unlocks the safe to make sure the money wasn't taken, and Rocky sees the code. When Alex and Rocky meet up, she takes the money and they plan to escape from the basement. While in the hall, the blind man barges out of the door and they have to watch him drag Money's body away. Whilst they are in the basement looking for an exit, the blind man finds the shoe that they left on the floor, which indicates that there were more people, so he panics and heads back to the safe only to find out that the money is gone. Back in the basement, they find a woman tied and kept in a room. She begs them to help her and shows them her newspaper, which reported the incident of the blind man's daughter. She was the woman who ran her over. They hesitated, but eventually Rocky refuses to leave her. They unbinded her from the harness and stumbled to the hatch. Alex looks for the keys and unlocks the door, but the blind man stood in front of the exit with a gun and rained bullets on them. Alex and Rocky survived, but the woman died. They ran back into the basement and hid behind the shelves. They watched the blind man mourn and shout when he found out he shot her. Pissed, he turns off the light and hunts them. As he knows the house well, he had no problem moving around. Rocky and Alex managed to escape back into the house, but the dog was sitting outside the door. Alex asks Rocky to unlock the door while he stalls the dog. A bang from the door prompts the attack from the dog. Rocky leaves the keys in the lock. They both run upstairs into a room. Alex wants to call the cops, as he thinks in their eye robbery would be a minuscule crime compared to murder and kidnapping. But Rocky wants to keep the money. Their conversation gets cut short when the blind man pushes through the door. Rocky climbs into the vent in the room to escape. On the other hand, the dog causes Alex to fall from the window on glass. The blind man shoots from the window, which causes the glass to break, and Alex falls back into the house. In the house, he gets pursued by the blind man into a room where Alex has no choice but to fight. The fight leads to a chokehold where Alex is trying to grab a gun, but it proves no use as it gets flung out of his hand. Alex is bested by the veteran, and the blind man, enraged, stabs him. We are then shown that the vents led Rocky to the outside of the house, but just as she's about to leave, she gets pulled by the blind man and is beaten and choked to unconsciousness. Rocky wakes up tied in the room and finds the blind man sitting in front of her. She tries to convince him that killing her won't bring his daughter back. That's when he reveals to her that the woman she killed was pregnant with his child and that now Rocky will take her place. We then cut to upstairs, where Alex is still alive. He manages to trap the dog and unlock the door. Back in the basement, the blind man prepares a metal plate on the stove and heats up the frozen sperm and plans to inject, as he says he's never forced himself on the previous woman. The struggle from Rocky is no good, but just as he was about to inject the sperm, Alex emerges and knocks the blind man. Rocky unleashes her rage and stuffs his sperm inside his own mouth. Alex puts a stop to it and tells her that she can't involve the cops if they steal the money. But if they leave the money, they can call the cops. They decide to take the money and leave. Alex juggles with the keys and opens the front door, but he's shot in the back by the blind man. Rocky takes this opportunity and dashes out of the door, and the dog pursues her. She manages to get to the car, but the dog bites the bag from her back to the floor. She gets trapped in the car with the dog outside. She composes herself and devises a trap of her own for the dog. She barely makes it out of the car. All of a sudden, she gets grabbed by the blind man from the back and he knocks her unconscious, dragging her back to his home, where she apologizes to Alex and sees a ladybug when she realizes she can set off the alarm. This confuses the blind man and he's unable to hear, so he shoots all around him. She takes this opportunity to knock him out for good. Police arrives just as she leaves. We then cut to her with her sister Didi and a TV playing in the background. The report is talking about a robbery of the house of a blind man. She states that he lost his vision due to a grenade splinter, and that he was robbed last night where he killed 2 burglars in self-defense and will be taken into hospital and quickly discharged as the symptoms are not serious. But the blind man doesn't mention any girl or anything stolen.